Hi everyone! You did so great yesterday with adjectives. You remembered that they are words that describe. And here are some of the answers I got yesterday. What is an adjective that describes Ringo's eyes? One of you said wild. Someone said wide. What is an adjective that describes the tiger? Jaylene said smooth. That is such a good adjective to describe a tiger. If you were to touch its back, it's probably really smooth. You could have said orange and loud, right? Those are all things that describe a tiger. So today we are going to read the rest of this story, and Grandpa is going to tell his story about his dog, Melvin. Tell it, Thomas commanded. Please, I mean. Well, said Grandfather, when Melvin and I were pups together, I was just as afraid of storms as he was. No, said Thomas. Yes, said Grandfather. We can't all be brave as tigers. Guess not, Thomas agreed. So there we were, the two of us, hiding under beds whenever a storm came. Think of that, said Thomas. That's what I'm doing, said Grandfather. Anyway, the day came when Melvin was out on some errand of his own, and I was doing my homework when all at once, with only a rumble of warning, down came the rain, down came the lightning, and all around and everywhere came the thunder. Wow, said Thomas, what did you do? Dove under the bed. But what about Melvin? I'm coming to that, said Grandfather. What about Melvin is what the story is about. I see, said Thomas. This is pretty exciting. Well, it was then. Are you going to listen or keep interrupting? I think I'll listen, said Thomas. Good. Where was I? Under the bed. So I was. Well, I lay there shivering at every clap of thunder, and I'm ashamed to say that it was some time before I even remembered that my poor little dog was all by himself out in the storm. Thomas shook his head in the dark. Oh no, so little Melvin was outside by himself during the storm. And when I did remember, Grandfather went on, I had the most awful time making myself wriggle out from under the bed and go looking for my father or my mother to ask them to go out and find Melvin for me. Grandfather, I told you I was afraid. This is a true story you're hearing, so I have to tell the truth. Of course, said Thomas, admiring his grandfather for telling a truth like that. Did you find them? I did not. They had gone out someplace for an hour or so, but I'd forgotten. Thomas, fear does strange things to people, makes them forget everything, but how afraid they are. You wouldn't know about that, of course. Thomas stroked his cat and said nothing. In any case, Grandfather went on, there I was, alone and afraid in the kitchen, and there was my poor little dog alone and afraid in the storm. What did you do? Thomas demanded. You didn't leave him out there, did you, Grandfather? Thomas, I put on my raincoat and opened the kitchen door and stepped out on the back porch just as a flash of lightning shook the whole sky and a clap of thunder barreled down and a huge man appeared out of the darkness holding Melvin in his arms. There's little Melvin. Phew! That man was 7 feet tall and had a face like a crack in the ice. Grandfather, you said you were telling a true story. It's true, because that's how he looked to me. He stood there, scowling at me, and said, Son, is this your dog? And I nodded, because I was too scared to speak. If you don't take better care of him, you shouldn't have him at all, said the terrible man. He pushed Melvin at me and stormed off into the dark. Gee, said Thomas, that wasn't very fair. He didn't know you were frightened, too. I mean, Grandfather, how old were you? Just about your age. Well, some people my age can get pretty frightened. Not you, of course. Thomas said nothing. Later on, Grandfather continued, I realized that man wasn't 7 feet tall, or even terrible. He was worried about the puppy, so he didn't stop to think about me. Well, I think he should have. People don't always do what they should, Thomas. What's the end of the story? Oh, just what you'd imagine, Grandfather said carelessly. Having overcome my fear enough to forget myself and think about Melvin, I wasn't afraid of storms any more. Oh, good, said Thomas. For a while, they were silent. The storm was spent. There were only flickers of lightning, mutterings of thunder, and a little patter of rain. All right, so it looks like the storm is letting up. That's good. Here's Ringo. When are the lights going to come on? Thomas asked. You know as much as I do, said Grandfather. Maybe they won't come on for hours, said Thomas. Maybe they won't come on until tomorrow. Maybe not. Maybe they'll never come on again, and what will we do then? We'll think of something, said Grandfather. Grandfather? Yes, Thomas. What I think that maybe if you hadn't been here and Ringo hadn't been here, and I was all alone in the house and there was a storm and the lights went out and didn't come on again for a long time like this, I think maybe then I would be a little bit afraid. Perfectly natural, said Grandfather. Thomas sighed. Grandfather yawned. Ringo jumped to the porch floor and walked daintily into the garden, shaking his legs. After a while, the lights came on. They turned them off and went to bed. And that is our story. Okay? So here are your 2 questions for today. Name an adjective to describe the grandfather's dog. Can you think of any adjective of describing words? How do you think the dog felt, little Melvin? How did you think he felt out there all alone? Give me an adjective. And the last question is, what happened at the end of the story? So go back to the last page and you will find what happened at the end of the story. Okay, have a great day, everybody, and let me know if you need any help. Bye.